Hello and welcome back to my Gold Award. So today I'm going to be sharing with you a little bit of the backstory on why Little Dresses for Africa is so important and just kind of like what life is like for young girls in Africa as of the current moment. Before you watch this presentation, I ask that you please complete the pre-test, so to speak, on the Google form. And then sometime towards the end of the presentation, I'll ask you to complete the post-test. Just answer as honestly as possible. There are no wrong answers. I just need to gather some data. So I thank you very much for helping with that in advance. All right, so starting us off, we'll go to marriage and pregnancy, which is unfortunately a reality for a lot of these girls. African countries account for 15 out of 20 countries with the highest child marriage rates. In 14 countries, 30 to 51% of young girls give birth before they even turn 18. 40% of young women are married before they're 18. And most of this is happening in sub-Saharan Africa. So that is outlined by the green section on that map on the left. This region also contains the highest rate of adolescent pregnancies, and many pregnant girls are forced into marriage because there's a stigma on having a child without being married first. It's very frowned upon. Many countries have required both secondary and primary school, but a lot of girls are excluded or expelled because they're pregnant or because they already have children. Tanzania and Sierra Leone are among the countries in South Africa that have harmful policies and practices that discriminate against pregnant and married girls. And the Human Rights Watch found that Tanzania had school officials conduct pregnancy tests and expel pregnant students. So even if you weren't showing, if you tested positive for that test, you were kicked out. Some countries, including Cameroon, South Africa, and Zambia, adopted re-entry policies though. So that way adolescent mothers can return to school after giving birth. But even if governments have these policies, school officials usually fail to carry them out very well, if at all. So many young wives are denied human rights, including like medical attention for health risks from their multiple pregnancies at such a young age. They are abused and their education is stopped. All of these are something that we don't really think of. You know, you wake up, you go to school, you complain about it. They can't even go to school, and it's hurting not only them, but their economy as well. We'll get into that in a little while. The poverty, the lack of law enforcement, corruption, religion, and customs are perpetuating child marriage. They have something called a dowry payment, and that's where families see their daughters as kind of like a source of wealth. They will actually sell their daughter into marriage in order to get money for their family, and that's just honestly because they just can't afford food. Like, that's a good way to get a lot of money, is to sell your daughter into marriage. That's happening in South Sudan. There's no fight in Africa for girls to be educated because they don't know what they're missing out on. There's no fight for them to gain back these human rights because they just don't know. They are uneducated, so they don't know that their situation is not as good as it could be. and there's limited access to health resources and knowledge on their bodies and resources like contraception or medical attention when complications occur during pregnancy or delivery. And then there's the sexually transmitted diseases. According to the United Nations, 80% of women ages 15 to 24 who have HIV live in sub-Saharan Africa. So that's 80% of young women who have HIV live in sub-Saharan Africa and across the continent. And girls aged 15 to 19 are 5 times more likely to be infected with HIV than boys. In September of 2015, the leaders from Africa adopted the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. They hope to end child marriage in the next 15 years, but UNICEF is warning them that it could take 100 if they don't get their act together. And of course, by not educating the girls, the countries lose out on potential social, economic, and political contributions that these girls could be making if they were given the right opportunities from the get-go. So like you and me can grow up to be whoever we want. We can be the president. We could be a doctor. We could start our own business. These girls can't do that. They're pretty much just destined to be married before they are legally an adult and just take care of the house and kids for the rest of their life. This is a quote from a midwife in a church in Africa. She said, "Our church doctrine is that girls must marry when they are between 12 and 16 years old to make sure they do not sin by having sexual relations outside of marriage." So because there's such a stigma on premarital sex and premarital pregnancy, it's their culture that is actually also encouraging girls to get married that young just so they don't make themselves sinners. Next, we're going to move on to lifestyle, what life is like for young women in Africa. They have poor health. Only 37% survive to the age of 65, compared with almost 90% in the UK. They have no money or income, no property. Women work 2/3 of Africa's working hours, produce 70% of its food, and only earn 10% of its income, and own less than 1% of their property. It's the amount that they work and the amount that they produce is not equivalent to the amount of money that they're making or the amount of property that they're able to own. And they work incredibly long hours. They work 3 hours a day longer than the average British woman does on a professional and domestic work combined, meaning the woman goes to work, she comes home and takes care of the house and then gets to relax. An African woman spends 3 hours longer working all day. Some of the responsibilities that they have, based on one woman's story that she told to an article, was she's up before 4 a.m. to begin the chores. She has to rekindle the fire, tidy around the house by sweeping/mopping the dirt floor with long grasses tied tightly to a stick. She has to care for the children, prepare food. She roasts kernels of wheat to give everyone one handful, and most of the time she doesn't eat herself. She doesn't need to eat, she says, because she wants to give it to her husband and her kids rather than take food for herself. So she's not taking care of herself properly. And then she needs to fetch water. It's a 25-minute walk down the hill to the pump, but it would take 40 minutes to walk back up with 5 gallons of water on that like stick on her back and tied on with like a rope of old rags. Of course, the kids help. Her sons shift stones for plowing and adventure on ox to find water, and the daughters fetch firewood and also fetch water with the mom sometimes. A quote from Elena V. She's 19 and married a 24-year-old man when she was 15. She says, "I face a lot of problems in marriage. I was young and did not know how to be a wife. I was pregnant, had to look after my husband, do housework, deal with in-laws, and work on the farm. My worst time was when I was pregnant. I had to do all of this and deal with a pregnancy while I was just a child myself." Some pictures for you. This is their life. It's very different from you and me. Now, I want you all to please stop and think, pause this presentation, and go ahead and answer the post-test Google form. And then when you're ready, you can come on back and I'll kind of explain more about my section of the project, I guess. Okay, so Little Dresses for Africa and their mission. Here's where we get into a little bit of what I am doing for my gold award. So it's my mission to make dresses and to teach you all how to make dresses and sani panties for these young girls so that they can have better hygiene, they can take better care of themselves, they can go to school with their new dresses and kind of start to be a little bit independent and like provide for themselves so that they can provide for others. So Little Dresses for Africa has a couple other projects other than just making dresses and the sani panties. They also have a mission for clean water to provide wells in villages. This provides sanitation, it stops the spread of disease, it increases their health, their cleanliness, their happiness. The previously mentioned daughters fetching water now don't have to because there's clean water where they live. So now they can go to school instead. It costs $5,500 for a well to provide water for at least 3,000 people. So maybe next time you want to sell Girl Scout cookies for donations or have a fundraiser, you guys could work on building a well and then get placed in their well wall of fame on their website. Just some food for thought. Then they also seek to provide education. They place primary schools and preschools in remote villages. So you have to complete primary school in order to move on, like with a certificate, in order to move on to secondary school. So by placing these primary schools closer, it allows more children to go to school. It can generally educate 450 to 500 children. A teacher living in the community increases the knowledge and prestige of the community almost immediately, as well as attendance of children. So by them being closer, it like gives their village more prestige. And that costs $25,000 to build a primary school. But this education, by them completing primary school, they can move on to secondary school, and education can stop the cycle of poverty. They also work on community. They have something called Buckets of Hope, and that's a project that provides relief for around $20. It's a bucket filled with staples such as rice, oil, sugar, tea, maize or corn, salt, soap, and whatever else they can provide for comfort, like a mosquito net or a blanket. They also provide dorms for girls rescued from child-headed families. Child-headed families are families that don't have parents anymore, so it's just a bunch of children living on their own, and typically the older sibling will take care of their younger siblings. And then those girls can return to school and society instead of being forced into childhood marriage. They also provide learning materials for schools. They provide a sewing center so they can teach some skills and the children can make a living, or adults could make a living. And some other things that they do include, but are not limited to, Bible distributions, bikes, 40-foot containers, wheelchairs, and vacation Bible school lessons and crafts. So Little Dresses for Africa, despite their name, is not only about little dresses. So thank you all very much for sitting with me through this presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to interact on our Facebook page. I'm sure others could help. If not, I could answer them myself when I see them. Once again, thank you very much. Good luck to all of you. And I hope that you have a great day. And I hope that to see some dresses being made as well.